Before the video starts, have you ever wondered, hey, does this guy live stream? The answer previously was no, but with the release of Monster Hunter Wilds, I intend to change that. Now, if you're only interested in me playing MapleStory and making Maple content, that's totally fine. That ain't going anywhere. So if that does interest you, follow me on my Twitch channel and join my community Discord, where you can pick up a special role that allows me to ping you for stream notifications. With that out of the way, on to the video. DPM charts. Whether you love them or you hate them, you probably enjoy looking at them to at least some degree. I personally love looking at them, and I love that they've been doing so many different iterations of them in the KMS community, especially since some of the placements on these DPM charts have left me a little bit confused, to say the least. For example, Dawn Warrior, my main of many years at this point, is not doing so good right now in KMS. Does that bother me at all? No, not in the slightest. In fact, I would rather be a bottom 5 class that at least feels good to play than be in the perceived position Dawn Warrior was in after the Ignition update, where everyone thought they were super OP, like a top 5 class, brain dead. They really had a kind of a negative reputation in my mind. But before I really get into any class placements, let's just talk about this DPM chart and what you need to know when you look at something like this. First off, one of the biggest obvious differences is this is based on KMS. One, they have mastery cores that we do not have yet. They do not have reboots, so for most of us GMS players, things are going to be a little bit different. They have bonus potentials and a bunch of other things that we don't have. We also have things that they don't have. Things such as attack speed 0, which benefits non-hurricane classes. We also just straight up have classes that they don't. And most importantly, don't make decisions based on a single snapshot of the meta. Things change drastically. There are classes on here that have almost consistently been top tier classes or bottom tier classes and have drastically shifted from their position. The way I see it with my class Dawn Warrior is, yeah, sure, we may be bottom 5 right now, but that means we only have room to grow. I'm content with playing this class. It still feels good to me. Like, they are a polished class with a lot of good things going for them. May not be damaged right now, but I don't really care. I suppose we should start with what almost every person wants to see when they look at a DPM chart, and that is who is on top right now. Well, we got a pretty usual cast in the top 5. Starting at number 1, we got Blaster, then Xenon, Kadena, Demon Avenger, and Kali. Now, what I like about this DPM chart specifically is that they are showing DPM, 15-second burst, 40-second burst in very clear, viewable terms. You can see how burst heavy a class is, how good their 40-second burst is, or if you just want DPM. I consider that actual useful information that you could use to find classes that you might enjoy. If you're like me, you don't like classes that are almost all in their burst. They're a 3-minute burst class, and in 15 seconds, they do almost all the damage that they're going to do for a boss fight. That is very unappealing to me. Actually, that's not entirely true. I really did enjoy Abrahams' insane amount of burst damage in a very short period of time. Although, don't get me wrong, prolonged bursts aren't perfect either. Having a burst that lasts an entire 45 seconds isn't exactly appealing when you have fights like Lucid that you can pretty much only get her to sit still and not go into a powerful attack for about 20 seconds. Now let's go down to the bottom of the DPM rankings, and I'll read the bottom 5, starting with Mechanic, Battle Mage, Wild Hunter, seriously rip Resistance right now, Dawn Warrior, and then, shockingly, Night Lord. But you know what inclusion is the most tragic here? It's Wild Hunter. Wild Hunter has been at the bottom of lists for so long, and for a while you could at least write it off that Wild Hunter was a supportive class. They gave an attack percent boost and real sharp eyes, and that has an incredible amount of value. But now, with the red elixir from the collector, it's kind of not really important anymore. Most boss fights won't last more than 15 minutes, and if they do, they're probably not going to last much longer than that, until you get to maybe like the super endgame bosses like Limbo. I imagine that fight probably has to last longer than 15 minutes. Regardless of that, they have no business being classified as a supportive class and being weaker to compensate. Just about the only justification you could possibly make for Wild Hunter being weaker on the DPM is that, one, they have a little bit of flexibility with being able to lock in the direction they're attacking, and that does make them able to have pretty good uptime on bosses, but not enough to warrant this placement on the list. You could also say they are amazing at grinding, but with Soul Janus, literally anyone can be a max mob an hour if they grind enough fragments first. As for Night Lord, the classic MapleStory player in me has a hard time ever believing this class is not in the top tier, but right now, it looks like they are doing pretty miserably, which is a goddamn shame. See, there's this weird thing where Night Lord and Nightwalker are very similar in a lot of ways. It's a common occurrence to find a player asking, hey, should I make a Nightwalker or a Night Lord? And almost every single time without fail, people are going to answer Nightwalker, and rightfully so. When you write out a comparison of the two classes on paper, it almost seems like a just obvious choice to choose Nightwalker. Nightwalker has insane bossing tools. They get a shield every once in a while that can prevent them from getting one shot. They have this little backstep that allows you to animation cancel attacks and instantly activate Dark Sight, which I firmly believe to just be one of the best bossing tools in the entire game. And I don't just mean Dark Sight, I mean the backstep as well. Nightwalkers have a really solid kit. They can also switch places with their clone to almost get an effect kind of like Bowmaster and Marksman's Teleporter. And for good measure, because the rest clearly was not enough, they have a cheat death. They got a lot, and that never stops them from being pretty much among the top of most DPM charts. This is the lowest I remember seeing Nightwalker in quite a long time, and they're not even low right now. They're just down at what, 13? But you know what's awesome? You know who's close to this? Just down a few ranks from Nightwalker is Thunderbreaker. Thunderbreaker is one of my favorite classes in this entire game, but it is also a class that I've avoided for the good of my fingers. And in the past, I avoided them because they just had numerous issues on top of being consistently weak. For this class that feels so aggressive and combo heavy, their damage was always crap. But you know what was even worse? Way back in the day when Thunderbreaker first got reworked into being what you know now, like with the anchor and water effects and sharks and stuff, that was back when bosses could 1-1 you and dispel you and stuff, and Thunderbreaker had their their shadow partner like skill, it gives them extra lines, be a buff that was on a cooldown. So you pop that, the boss dispels you immediately, and you just lost a massive chunk of your damage. So to see Thunderbreaker go from those days to actually making a respectable placement on a list, oh, it makes me feel so happy. On top of that, Thunderbreaker is getting one of the best mastery core upgrades probably any class is getting, not just because of final damage. I don't know details about that. They're probably doing pretty well based on this tier list, but even better than that, they are basically going to contend with classes like Paladin, Dark Knight, and Mihil in terms of tankiness. The short and simple of it is every time a Thunderbreaker does a linked attack after they get the 3rd or 4th mastery core, they are going to receive a small shield stacking up to 15%. So in the best case scenario, you're sitting at full health and you have a 15% shield, and you can just combo through attacks that otherwise would one-shot you. And even when you're getting chipped down, it's basically going to function like constant lifesteal. Thunderbreaker is going to be an absurdly tanky class, and you're just going to be able to combo through the pain and keep DPSing. Needless to say, I'm very excited for it, and I've been planning to make a video dedicated to Thunderbreaker to show 1, that the class is working right now, has no bugs that cause crashes, and 2, has a bright future ahead. So now I want to talk about some of the classes that got some of the biggest buffs in the balance patch that we just got. 3 ones that come to mind for me are Bowmaster, Wind Archer, and Dual Blader. Starting with Wind Archer, if you recall, the buffs to Wind Archer were a whole lot of damage gains, just raw damage, but not only that, they also gained the ability to move and jump while they were hurricaning. Now again, a reminder, in GMS, Wind Archer would fall a little bit lower on this list than they would in KMS because of attack speed 0. Even without that, they're already at number 20 on this list, which is very impressive, because Wind Archer used to be a bottom class, like they were one of the worst in the game. And again, those were on KMS rankings where they're going to do even worse in GMS. Wind Archer was doing really bad, and Bowmaster was right down there with them. As for Bowmaster, they also have risen quite a lot, but not as much as Wind Archer. But do you know what? That makes all the sense in the world. If you've never played a Bowmaster, you might not know that they have one of the most stacked bossing kits in the entire game. They have a teleporter capable of cheesing many different mechanics as long as you're creative enough, one of the best lifesteals in the entire game still even after being nerfed, incredible, almost unrivaled mobility while DPSing with their Hurricane, and pretty much a cheat death on a relatively low cooldown that builds up to 2 charges. And not only that, you used to lose DPS for face tanking things with those charges, but now thanks to 6 Job, they don't have to worry about that anymore. And I'm not even slandering Bowmaster, being like, oh, it's a brain dead class. No, I love Bowmaster, even I don't care if it's brain dead. It is fun as hell. But I also don't think it has any right being some super high DPS class because of how much utility it has. It should pay a price for that, and I think it is kind of, although I still think its DPS ranking might almost be a little bit generous. Not to mention the fact that Bowmaster is going to be one of the biggest recipients of buffs thanks to the burst button. But Bowmaster is not the only one with insane bossing utility. So is Dual Blade, which, funny enough, literally right below Bowmaster. Dual Blader also has pretty good mobility with things like Blade Ascension, a real up jump now, which is amazing, multiple iframes that can be cooldown resetted, and also top tier lifesteal. One one of the only classes that can potentially give Bowmaster any kind of run for their money in that department. And of course, being an Explorer Thief, that also means they have access to Dark Sight. Needless to say, they're a very tough class to kill. I would say the only weakness they really have is ground-based movement, because their rush does kind of have a lot of delay on it, but you know, it can also just flash jump out of the way, Dark Sight things in the first place that you might normally want to dodge, or of course, just iframe it. One of the biggest surprises for me with these lists was just how high Mihiel and Paladin placed. They are both way higher than I expected, and one thing I don't know about these lists is what kind of play they're assuming. For example, we have classes like Kali that they might be assuming perfect play that just won't be realistic in a lot of scenarios or for many players. So in the hands of a less experienced player, you can probably expect them to fall significantly on the DPM ranking. But a class like Mihiel is pretty much built around having 100% uptime on any boss you fight thanks to its constant iframes. And it's also because of those iframes that you would typically expect Mihiel to at least be one of the weakest classes in the game, especially because it's not only bringing damage to the table, it is also supporting its party to at least some degree. Overall, this is definitely one of the most interesting DPM rankings or snapshots I have ever seen in this game. Never in a million years would I expect my class to be weaker than a Blaze Wizard, or for Hero to be only one spot better than Phantom. There's also some other classes that surprise me a little bit, like how high Lara is, how low Buccaneer is, or Ho Young for that matter. Ho Young, from what I understand, is a rather difficult class to play and typically always perform pretty good on these things, and now it's sitting below Ice Lightning Mage. Things can also change quite fast though, especially now that 6 job mastery cores are finally being done with, especially in KMS. My hope is that we'll get some balance patches that affect everybody, not just people who have invested hundreds of fragments into 6th job.